In the past 4 decades, cell phones have come a long way. Once large, bulky, and only affordable for wealthy businessmen, they're now a vital part of everyday life for just about everyone. The route to this point has been a varied one, though, with incredible innovation and technological advances. But for every design that moved things in the right direction, there were plenty that went the wrong way. From strange shapes to unexpected features, here are the top 15 unusual cell phones ever made. Number 15. Monom Runcible. We're used to most smartphones looking and feeling quite similar to one another, but in 2016, Monom announced the development of the Runcible, which would take an entirely different approach. The circular wooden device would run a pared-down version of Android and would focus on making calls, sending messages, and very little else. There wouldn't even be notifications, which would allow users to get on with their daily lives and only be interrupted if someone actually tried calling them. The pocket watch-inspired design proved to be so appealing that after launching a crowdfunding site, the idea had soon raised $250,000. Developing concept phones and actually delivering them to customers is an expensive business, however, and by 2020, thousands of people who had pledged for their own Runcible were still frustratedly waiting. Whether or not these will ever make it into the hands of anyone is yet to be seen, but it shows there's still an appetite out there for cell phone designs that go against the norm. Number 14. Pantone 5107SH. Customers in different countries have different tastes and requirements from the smart devices that they carry around with them, and possibly the most surprising feature of any phone of the recent decade was included with the Pantone 5107SH. Designed and developed by SoftBank and targeted at the Japanese market, the phone had everything you might expect from a smart device of the time, running Android 4.0. It had a 3.7-inch LCD screen and a 4-megapixel camera, and featured a 1.4 GHz processor. As it was made in collaboration with Pantone, which is the company responsible for developing the world's most popular color matching system, it's perhaps no surprise that the Pantone 5 was available in 8 different vibrant colors. But despite being released almost 10 years ago, this phone probably had a feature that yours doesn't: its very own Geiger counter. At the time, Japanese citizens were still reeling from the Fukushima nuclear disaster, and the idea of being able to check your surroundings for raised radiation levels gave an incredible sense of peace of mind. Capable of measuring radiation within 20% accuracy, the reading wouldn't be absolutely precise, but would be enough to give you a warning that you should quickly move on. Number 13. Siemens Xelibri. There's no doubt that we all look at our cell phones not only for their functionality, but their aesthetic too. This is by no means a new factor. In 2003, Siemens released a new range of phones called the Xelibri, and this saw 8 different fashion-inspired concepts being produced. The first 4, known as Space on Earth, which were designed in-house, were meant to look futuristic and took their inspiration from the technology used in Star Trek. While the second 4, called Fashion Extravaganza, were created by the IDEO Design Company. Even the team at Siemens accepted that 60% of the market wouldn't be interested in the Xelibri designs, but that they were targeting the 40% of people for whom style was the most important factor. Planned to release 2 different ranges each year under the brand. While the externals may have looked modern, eye-catching, and experimental, the technology within the phones was basic at best and in no way competed with other devices being released at the time. As a result, there was very little interest, and Xelibri phones accounted for less than 2% of Siemens' total handset sales. By 2004, the decision was made to pull the plug on the project, and this supposed design revolution was consigned to history. Number 12. The Haier P7. Apple was the company that arguably revolutionized cell phones with the release of the iPhone, but they were by no means the only ones who were innovating with designs at the time. Manufacturers tried out a huge range of different ideas, some that incorporated elements of what we find familiar with today's smartphones, and others that make no sense to a modern eye at all. In 2004, Chinese company Haier announced their latest attempt at the next best thing, a model called the P7. Described as being a pen phone, the device measured 5.9 by 1 by 0.9 inches and was fitted with a small 128 by 64 pixel color screen and a VGA camera, which was actually quite impressive for the time. Also featuring a USB interface to ensure you could transfer your photos from the phone to your computer. This was one of the first camera phones available at a reasonable price point. But quite why they decided to design it in such a way never became clear. The thin screen made it difficult to write messages or even numbers, and you definitely would have no idea if you actually framed your camera shot properly either. Born from a time when everyone still thought phone designs would keep getting smaller and smaller, the P7 is a good example of why the smartphones of today are going in the opposite direction. Number 11. LG Wing 5G. LG is one of the world's most successful smartphone and technology manufacturers, and with such a huge research and development budget every year, are on the cutting edge of new designs. The company is in a constant race with others to create the next big trend in the industry, and in 2020 released their latest attempt, the Wing 5G. Constructed in 2 layers, at first nothing seems too unusual about it, but then the main screen of the phone swivels up to reveal a smaller screen beneath it. Once it's fully folded out, you're left with a T-shaped device, and one that has far more screen space than others have a similar size. The difficulty LG faces with this design, though, is convincing people that it's useful. Having extra space does offer a number of opportunities, such as being able to use the phone on the small screen while watching video on the larger one, using both the rear and front cameras of the device at the same time, or even given more control over the camera settings while you're setting up the shot. But because apps are yet to be designed to use it to its full capability, and customers will take a while to get used to the extra screen, the jury's out about whether this is a clever innovation or simply a gimmick that'll never be seen again. Number 10. Toshiba G450. Released in 2008, the Toshiba G450 was a unique-looking cell phone that was targeted at users who wanted a device that could double as a USB modem that could be plugged in directly to their computer. With size considerations needing to be taken into account, this led to the development of a rather unusual face which featured 3 circles. The top one housed a small LED screen inside it, while the other 2 split the traditional keypad in half and featured the number keys in a circular orientation. At just 4 inches tall and 1.5 inches wide, it was a tiny device that worked surprisingly well as a modem. As for its qualities as a phone, these were somewhat lacking. Users found the buttons too tiny and fiddly to be able to use properly, and the screen was too small to be able to display a useful amount of information on, and it didn't even have Bluetooth capability. In many ways, the G450 was an early smartphone in the way that Toshiba had attempted to combine a phone with a music player and a modem. But in this instance, it only really successfully worked as a modem, and the other functions were simply too awkward to use. Due to the lack of interest, the model was soon delisted and the company decided to go in a different direction. Number 9. BMW Key Fob Phone. Modern-day smartphone designers have been working with car manufacturers to combine technologies where possible. And not only does this mean that your phone can now plug in and control the in-car entertainment system, but can also double as a key to enter and start your vehicle. This isn't exactly a new concept, however, because in the early 2010s, BMW released a key fob that could also double as a phone. Ideal for people who are constantly losing either their car keys or their mobile phone, the device was primarily a fob that would grant keyless entry into their latest vehicles, as well as being able to start the engine keyless. But with the addition of a SIM card, it could also be used to make phone calls and connect your car's entertainment systems for hands-free calls. Of course, because it was a similar size to traditional key fobs, the Key Fob Phone didn't exactly work flawlessly as a phone and was released at a time when smartphones were increasing in popularity and couldn't compete with them in any meaningful way. BMW's attempt was scrapped soon after it was released, and within a few years they had partnered with companies like Apple to finally provide the keyless option they always wanted. Number 8. Nokia 7280. For a long time, Nokia was the world's leading cell phone creator and manufacturer, and one of the reasons why the company was so revered was its approach to design. Known for its rugged and durable handsets, Nokia was able to create limited runs of unusual devices to see what would become popular, and this led to the creation of some of the most experimental phones ever conceived. One of the strangest was the 7280, which was described by Fortune magazine as being one of the best products of 2004. Part of Nokia's fashion phone line, as often referred to as the lipstick phone, the 7280 was a compact design with a slider end and a navy spinner instead of a keypad. The small screen would display text and number information, but when inactive it would turn into a mirror. Pitched as being the must-have fashion accessory with its black, white, and red styling, Nokia invested heavily in the marketing, even getting it featured in music videos by the Pussycat Dolls and Christina Milian. As a result, it was moderately successful and even spawned a follow-up phone, the 7380. But with the first iPhone being released just 2 years later, designs like this soon fell out of fashion. Number 7. C91 Golden Buddha Phone. Phones have often been used as a way to show someone's wealth or as a fashion statement, and in 2009, the holiest phone of all was released in China, known as the C91 Golden Buddha. The round device, which featured a 2-inch screen, a 1.3 megapixel camera, an FM radio, MP3 player, and dual SIM support, was targeted at those that wanted to keep their faith close with them as they traveled, and even offered the ability to use a virtual prayer room. One of the things that limited the use of the phone, however, was that it used a closed operating system, so users weren't able to install their own apps, and instead had to make do with the ones the developer chose to preload. It was, of course, a lavish phone too, with 24-karat gold plating all over, real pieces of jade and pearl powder lacquer, which resulted in it being the most expensive phone in China for a long time, retailing at the equivalent of $1,750. Unfortunately, because it was only designed with the Chinese market in mind, it was only compatible with 2 GSM frequencies, neither of which worked on networks in the Americas, so seeing one of these outside Asia was incredibly rare indeed. Number 6. Telson TWC 1150. Watches have, for centuries, been high-valued and prized items, and even they moved into the technological future with the development of smartwatches. Again, Apple paved the way with this, but plenty of manufacturers have now entered the fold, and normally they work by connecting them with a smart device, which allows you to control a variety of apps from your wrist. Telson, however, was arguably ahead of their time in 2005, when the Indian company released the TWC 1150, something that was a combination of a camera, a mobile phone, and a watch. Without such advanced wireless connectivity, however, all components had to be worn on the wrist, and this led to a rather large and cumbersome design. Amazingly, the device came with an infrared wireless earpiece, a finger ring receiver, a 256-color LCD with sapphire glass, and a detachable camera. It also had photo caller ID, a speakerphone, stopwatch, a planner, and a choice of 16 polyphonic ringtones and voice recording and recognition software. It's amazing that with something like this on the market, Apple even thought the world needed the iPhone, but in the end, customers decided that the TWC 1150 was too cumbersome and that the audio quality was too poor, especially with a price tag of around $550. Number 5. Hubble Phone. Turing Robotics has attempted to design and launch several revolutionary phone designs in recent years, but due to a combination of factors, they haven't exactly achieved the success they were hoping for. In 2018, the company announced its latest iteration to be released in 2020, the Hubble Phone. And by all accounts, if it fails, it'll be the last design they ever try to sell. Described by the company as having a multi-dimensional screen, what this really means is that it has a main screen with a secondary display, and that the screen can be folded up and swiveled at virtually any angle you could want. Also featuring a number of cameras facing in all directions, the developers say that you can call someone simply by mouthing their name. Where this dual-screen capability comes in useful, according to Turing, is when you're multitasking, in which case you won't need to rearrange your windows, and instead can flip to a different screen. Said to have a main 4K display along with 2 further HD screens and 2 large batteries to power it all, the main camera was planned to be an insane 60 megapixels, and there'd be a further 3 12-megapixel cameras too. Powered by 2 Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 processors and with 5G connectivity, Turing is certainly pitching this as the most advanced phone ever, something it doubled down on with its $2,750 price tag. Number 4. Samsung Juke. Released in October of 2007, the Samsung Juke, also known as the F210, was the company's attempt at combining a cell phone with a music player. Released with a huge advertising campaign behind it, which included using the song Jukebox Hero by Journey, the slim phone had 2 gigabytes of internal flash memory, of which 1.87 gigabytes was reserved solely for music storage. With no option to expand the storage beyond that, users of the phone soon found themselves limited with how much music they could keep on it, and more importantly, its restricted ability to store images, ringtones, and other sounds in the 22 megabytes that was kept free for them. Featuring a VGA resolution camera that had a special night mode to take photos in low light conditions, the Juke was just 3.8 by 1.2 by 0.8 inches and weighed just a little over 2.8 ounces. While it may not have been great for making calls, it was able to send picture messages along with traditional SMS, and it certainly got the music player aspect right too. Offering 3D sound and the ability to create playlists and listen to music based on the artist, the genre, or the album, along with displaying an equalizer on the screen while listening to music for live alterations, the Juke was, for a time, the best music player and phone hybrid on the market. Number 3. Vertu Signature Touch. The more prevalent cell phones have become, the more companies have been trying to find ways to make their own products different from their competitors. While it may not be the largest segment of the market, there's a great demand for ultra-premium expensive devices which can act as a display of wealth. While you've probably heard of gold-plated Samsung or iPhones, Vertu designs its luxury phones from the beginning. In 2015, they released the Signature Touch, which remains one of the most extravagant and crass cell phone designs ever seen. The 5.2-inch phone has a body made from titanium, has a screen made up of one single piece of super strong 130-carat sapphire, and can be hand-wrapped in calf, lizard, or alligator skin depending on each customer's preference. Featuring an angular V shape at the top, the leather certainly gives it a premium feel and almost feels as if it's been taken from a luxury car. Even with the ability to add countless gemstones, gold trim, and pretty much any other material you can think of, the Signature Touch isn't all about its looks, because it was also designed with top-spec internal architecture for the time. It had a 21-megapixel 4K camera, a Qualcomm Snapdragon 810 processor, and 64 gigs of inbuilt storage. What's arguably most impressive, though, is that Vertu's own apps that come pre-installed, such as a security app that lets you encrypt messages and calls, and to completely wipe the phone clean if you lose it, as well as a concierge service that, at the touch of a red button on the side, promises to be able to arrange anything you want. Number 2. Serenata. In the mid-2000s, Samsung had realized that cell phones would soon incorporate other electronic devices, so made an agreement to develop a range of devices in collaboration with Bang & Olufsen. The first of these, known as the Serene, was released in Europe in 2005 at a price of around $1,200. In many ways, this was simply the test run, because 2 years later they released the follow-up, the Serenata, which actually won the second-place award in the 2008 Wallpaper Design Awards that year, in which the first prize went to the original iPhone. Rather than using a main touchscreen or traditional keypad, the $2,000 Serenata instead used the click wheel that had been so successful on Bang & Olufsen products, along with an upper touchscreen. It folded in the middle with a motor-assisted aluminum hinge, but one of the major drawbacks was that it didn't offer any of the features that were becoming more expected at the time, mainly the ability to install apps and games. Its 0.3-megapixel camera was also terribly underwhelming, which definitely affected its popularity. As you'd expect, though, the sound quality offered by the Serenata was exceptional, and despite having issues with virtually every other aspect of its design, reviewers were in agreement that it was the best handset they had ever listened to music on. In the end, of course, this wasn't enough to make the Serenata a commercial success, and Samsung was forced to give up on that design approach and start on a different path. Number 1. Motorola StarTAC Rainbow. The 90s was a decade when ingenuity in cell phone design hit its peak, and the majority of players in the industry were very different from the ones today. It was Motorola that the competition looked towards to work out what the next best thing would be, and in 1996, the most iconic phone of all was the Motorola StarTAC. It became so popular that in the following year, the company released what remains the most colorful and maddening-looking phone ever, the StarTAC Rainbow. Featuring a 1.75-inch screen, space for 100 numbers in the phone book, and the ability to remember the last 10 numbers that you dialed, this phone didn't have a camera, nor did it have a loudspeaker, Bluetooth, GPS, Wi-Fi, or even a clock, an alarm, or any games. What it did have, however, was 6 different colors across its main body, a removable battery, and up to 2 hours of talk time and 40 hours of standby before needing to be charged. Looking at it today, everything about it is completely ridiculous, but in the 90s, everyone wanted one. It was the epitome of cell phone design at the time, when only around 12 or 13% of the population in the US even had a wireless device. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.